What's up, everybody? It's Dakota, and it's another beautiful Saturday in the desert, meaning that at some point tonight, I will find myself in a casino playing some poker. But this video is not going to cover the session I played tonight. It's going to cover the session I played last Saturday, which was a great session. It was a lot of fun, a lot of interesting spots. We went down to the Aria because it's the first session I get to film where I have permission to film. So we got some good footage. And without further ado, let's hop into those hands. All right, jumping right in, first hand off the deck. As soon as we sit down, we look down at the beautiful King 9-8 double suit. I've played 3 sessions in a row and haven't seen a hand this beautiful, so let's capitalize. Under the gun limps, somebody in middle position limps, and the cutoff, a young aggressive guy who will be in many hands throughout this vlog, goes ahead and makes it 20. We're not gonna settle for 20. We'll go ahead and bump it up, only the pot, make it $80. The under the gun limper hits us with the back raise, under the gun limp re-rizzle, out of control. He makes it 205 all in, and it looks like it's going to be the start of a good session. Cutoff young aggressive guy gets out of the way, and we obviously are snapping it off. We only go one time, so let's see it. Flop, jack, 3, deuce, 2 hearts, the overpair, the flush draw. It's looking good. Turn is the 7 of clubs. Now, if by some miracle we were behind, we also have some straight draws to go along with the flush draw and our overpair. The river, more or less a brick for us, the 8 of clubs, and we have one pair, kings. Our opponent says no good. Aces. Tough start. In his credit, he did have the best starting hand in PLO. He had the ace, jack 10 double suit. I've played quite a few hands of PLO, and I've actually never had the ace, jack 10 double suit. So in a way, it's like he deserved it. Good for him. We ship him $205. Bit of a rocky start to lose with an exceptional starting hand. I'm not going to let that get me down. The energy in the room tonight is insane. Phil Hellmuth was mixing it up in the 1-3, and then I turn around and I see the legend, Brad Owen, casually mixing it up in the 25-25-50 game, sitting with about 20K in front. It's kind of surreal walking into the room and seeing legends of the poker community just casually playing some sessions. Lucky for me, there are no legends of the poker community at my table, and we plan on capitalizing on that in our next hand. There's a straddle in this hand, and young aggro kid that we've mentioned before goes ahead and opens the action from the hijack to 35, and we're on the button with not the best hand in the world by any means. The ace queen 10-5, not the nut suit. Ace queen 10-5 is obviously pretty good cards, but we like to see that nut suit double suited. But against this particular player who seems to be pretty aggressive, willing to mix it up, I want to be playing as many pots as I can in position on him. So we go ahead and put in the call, and we go heads up in PLO, which is a rarity. We go heads up to a flop of a beauty, queen 10-5 rainbow. Young aggressive guy goes ahead and bets 50, and we're trying to think how to get all the money in here. We're about 500 effective to start the hand, and I'm trying to think of the perfect size to raise now and then get all the money in on the turn to maximize any draws. If he has any ace king jack 10 or some like higher wrap stuff and pair, it's probably going to be most of his continue range here, considering we block all the sets. We go ahead and make it 150, and he doesn't waste much time before calling. We sized it pretty perfectly. We have exactly a pot size bet behind. The turn brings an absolute dud, deuce of clubs. He checks, and we go ahead and pot, put him all in, and he snaps us off. Almost beats us in the pot, really. I say one time, and we get the 5 of hearts on the river. So if we were needing to dodge some stuff, we did. We make a boat, and we scoop this pot. We scoop a nice little pot there, and we bring the stack up to over 1,000. We've already caught the double up, and I think we're like 10 minutes into the session. All right, moving right along. We're not going to let the momentum die. We're on the must-move game, and the floor just walked up and let me know that this is my last hand. I can play my button, and then I got to go. This game's pretty good, so I was kind of upset that we have to leave, but obviously all these players are going to eventually make it to my table. We look down at the king 3-8-8. Pretty bad hand, not going to lie. But when we have the button and people are getting after it, We don't mind mixing it up here. Try and make some nut flush draws potentially on ace-high boards. Maybe hit an 8. Who knows? There's a straddle, and then next to act makes it 25. The cutoff throws in a calling chip. We call, and the straddler calls. $100 in the pot, and we go to the flop of 8, 7 deuce, 2 diamonds. No diamond in our hand. We do flop the nuts. That's the first step in PLO. We just bet 60. Under the gun straddler just goes ahead and rips it for 275. Other 2 players fold, and obviously we're throwing in the calling chips. Common theme for the night. Run it once, dealer. Let's hold. Turn 3, and river is a 3. We make multiple boats, and that's obviously going to be good to scoop another. We're in about 15 or 20 minutes into the session, and we are running good. We rack up our chips and head down to the main game, where stacks are significantly deeper. We're probably average stack with 1,500 in front. All right, we're at the main game, and to my direct left is definitely a fun player. He was at the must move, and I never got into a pot with him, but he probably lost 3 or 4 buy-ins almost instantaneously. He was constantly potting and all in. So we've definitely identified him as somebody we want to play pots with. We look down at the king, queen, deuce, deuce, which, let's just be honest, is a bad hand. I can't really put it any other way. This is a bad hand. A good rule of thumb in PLO is if you have a deuce in your hand, you can probably just muck it from almost any position. But we don't listen to that, and we decide we're going to call an open. Hijack makes it 15, and we throw in the call, trying to get a feel for the table and hoping that the button player to our left also calls, which we are pretty confident he will. But to our surprise, we're wrong. He actually raises to 65, and we're not going to go anywhere. We're trying to play pots with this guy. Hijack calls, and we put in the call. Flop is pretty good, not the best in the world. We have the king, queen, 9 rainbow, backdoor flush draw. All things considered, when you're playing king, queen, deuce, deuce, it's definitely a good flop. We go ahead and check it over to the raiser. I don't see really a point in leading here, but in my surprise, he kind of just checks it back, which is something I didn't even know he knew he could do. So good for him. Turn is the king of spades, and now we're loving our decision that we called pre-flop with this hand. When in doubt, just run good is the moral of the story. We're trying to build a pot. We don't feel like our opponents are super strong. We bet 60, and he does call. River is the ace of hearts, which we don't really love because of obvious reasons that the average 1-2 PLO players raising range pre-flop consist of a lot of aces and ace-king. I think we can discredit ace-king a lot here. I think he would raise us on the turn and also just probably bet that on the flop. So we definitely got to go for some value here. We go ahead and bet 125, and then almost instantaneously, my opponent says, yeah, that is the worst words in poker to hear at a low stakes table. If you got it, you got it, as he moves all in. I mean, what to say about this? Really nothing, right? I mean, what does he have? I think the answer is exclusively aces somehow. We tank for a little bit and we just end up folding. It's gross, but the live tells are just telling me it's always aces. So we be disciplined, which unfortunately has been a common theme lately. If you watch the last vlog, we folded a big boat as well correctly. I'm getting kind of tired of folding boats, but anywho. All right, enough of the standard hands. We want a spicy hand, and this hand is spicy. At this point, I've pretty much identified this table to be super passive. The VIP on my left has busted and went home, and everybody else is just playing pretty standard and pretty face up. And in this case, we want to push our edge. We're trying to get into a lot of pots. We're trying to realize our equity and win pots post-flop. So any decently connected hand, we're trying to get in there. That's how we find ourselves opening the 10, 8, 7, 6 with the 8 high suit after an under the gun limp. We make it 20. This isn't a super great hand by any means. We have the 8 high suit, not even the 10 high suit. And we like it to not be a 1-gapper, not missing a 9. But I digress. We get 5 callers, standard PLO stuff, and we see the king 5-6 rainbow flop. All things considered, pretty good board. We're open-ended. The king's probably going to be best for my range in this case. Not that anybody's really thinking of ranges in PLO too often. But we want to thin the field. We don't want people turning flush draws, turning 2 pair, that kind of thing. So we bet 60 into the 100. and we get one customer only the big blind calls, who we're decently deep with. Turn is the dream. The 9 of hearts, bang, we get there, and now we're trying to think, how do we get the most? Board's pretty connected. Me opening under the gun, these players aren't going to think that I have this much range, this low board like this. So when he checks, we have one size pot. We put 220 in the middle. The opponent wastes almost no time before repotting, putting it all in. Dream spot. We're obviously calling, and we're ready to run it. This is such a dream spot because he almost always also has 7-8 here. Most of the time, we just don't have a chance of losing this hand, and we have 2 redraws. We can hit a 7 or 8 and have the 10 high straight, and then we also have hearts. More than likely here, he just has no redraw. It's just the naked 7-8. Run it one time. Dealer, we need to hit the redraw. The river, the 9 of clubs. And of course, we chop it up. A lot of build up for a pretty anticlimactic ending. Oh well, that's how it goes. It really was a dream spot. We chop up some dead money, and we move on to the next hand. All right, in the next hand, we get the closest thing to a playable hand we've seen in the last couple hands. We have king for 3. Definitely not the best kings you've ever seen, but at least we have one suit, and the other 2 cards are somewhat connected. We're in the straddle, a couple of limps, and the button player makes it 50. We call to set mine, and so do the other 2 players. So $200 in the pot, and we get a beautiful flop, the king 8 deuce. It's kind of a double-edged sword because there are no draws, and I mean no draws out there. So I think we just want to check and flow, and hopefully somebody will stab here. Villain bets 125 on the button, and we're pretty deep. Just calling, we can definitely get the money in by the river, but at the same time, if I raise now, what is he really going to call with? I almost don't want to spook him. And so for that reason, I just put in the call for 125. Debatable if that's right, but I think it's correct with 2 other players behind that can call as well. We want all the action in this hand. We're not really fearing too many runouts. We even have a backdoor flush draw. Turn seals the deal for us, the deuce of clubs. And I think in game, I wish I would have found a lead here. The deuce, he's just really going to check back. I don't even know what he can have here that he's betting into 4 people, but if he had some type of pair hand, he's not going to love the deuce. So I think I wish I would have led here, but we don't. We check, and he just snap checks it back. Typically an indication that he's pretty much done with the hand. River, 6 of clubs, and we bet 200 into the 450 in the pot, and he doesn't take much time before he folds, and we scoop a nice little pot. Everybody knows what's better than kings, though, and that is aces. Here we have the ace, 5, 7 with 1 suit. Not the worst aces I've ever seen, but some decent ones. We go ahead and make it 30. First to act under the gun, over the straddle. We get 1 caller before the same player from the last hand, who's now in the small blind for this hand, makes it 135. Other 2 players in between us fold, and we're about 1,000 effective here. If I were to call the 135, I don't know why. I think it started to get later in the night. This player was getting out of line. I didn't want to spook him. I can't really explain it, but we decide to call here, which I think when we're 1,000 effective is probably just bad. We are in position. These aren't the best aces ever. We don't really want to call and then the player behind us call. So yeah, I don't love not re-raising here. Anyway, as played, I do call, and the hijack player calls as well. Pretty consistent with the night. We're not getting in any too tough of spots. We get the queen 3 deuce rainbow board. We have the gut shot. We have the overpair. We have a backdoor flush draw. It's just pretty much a beautiful situation unless he was re-raising with queens, which not many people do at these stakes. Small blind goes ahead and bets 300 into 415, and at this point, it's definitely not a bluff, whatever he's betting with. And a lot of times, when he's betting into 2 opponents like this on this board, I just feel like he also has aces at this point, especially after raising pre-flop. And against another pair of aces, we have pretty decent equity. We have a gut shot, which is hard for him to have. We have a backdoor flush draw. And we also are okay with him folding aces. So with those things considered, we decide that now's the time to put the money in, and we go ahead and jam all in for 965. And then my opponent goes into the tank. And now it's pretty clear to me that I think he has kings, which really makes me upset that we didn't raise pre-flop, but I digress. Don't think of the past. Focus on what is happening right now. And right now, in my mind, I'm screaming, call. One pair is definitely good. He thinks about it for a while, mentions how he doesn't have any draws and that I probably just have queens here, and then ends up letting it go, which I'm not going to lie was surprising to me. I didn't think he would have a bet 300 fold for 600 more hand. Yeah, I probably just played every street of this hand wrong. Who knows? I definitely don't. But it was a fun one, and we scoop a decent pot, no doubt. Even without getting the max, we definitely capture that about 500 in profit right here. All right, thus far tonight, we have been met with almost no resistance. We've been running pretty good. We've been getting a little out of line and been getting rewarded for it. And this hand is no different. We have the king, queen, queen, 3 triple suit with the 3 dangler. About as bad as it gets, quite frankly. This hand, to mostly go set mining, is kind of our goal, and to play a pot post flop. So I limp first act over the straddle for 10. The button also calls, and then the super young, or the young aggressive guy in the small blind goes ahead and makes it 40. Big blind calls, under the gun calls, we call, and the button calls. So we're getting in that perfect spot to set mine. And set mine is exactly what we do. We mine successfully. Flop is queen 6 deuce with 2 diamonds. We don't have a diamond in our hand. Players check to me, and we definitely want to start building this pot. We can never afford to check back here with only one player left to act. And we go 150, about 75% pot. Only the aggressive original raiser calls. 500 in the pot, and the turn's the 9 of hearts. We still have the nuts, but that 9 is definitely getting some connectivity on this board. At least it wasn't a diamond. The young aggressive guy checks, and he has about 1,300 behind. So we can pretty much bet 75% pot here, and then 75% pot on the river. Basically just go 75% on all streets here is kind of our goal. I think pot is probably also fine, but we go ahead and bet 400, and he doesn't take too long before saying all in. Music to our ears. And in fact, it takes me a second to call because he cuts out 400 in chips and then puts the 400 in chips on the table, or like across the line. But as he's doing that, says all in. And I was so confused for a second. I almost kind of felt bad after because I don't snap with the nuts here. But it messed me up so bad. Anyway, after we realize what's happening, we put the money in. Dealer says twice. I say, no, sir. One time, dealer. River is the 7 of spades. Pretty dicey. A lot of inside wraps got there, which is definitely something he could be potting with. Some inside wraps and some diamond draws. At least it's not a diamond. And I say set. And he says, you're good. Mucks his hand. And we scoop a big pot. About a 3K pot. We're into this session for about 700. And at this time we have about 3,500 in stack. Running good. Being met with little resistance. And in this hand, getting lucky. I'm sure we had to dodge diamonds and some high wraps. He later told me he did have the high wrap. So he probably had something like the king, jack 10, 9, king, queen, jack 10, something of that nature. It is a drunk man's tale, but I don't see why he would lie about it. So we do get lucky. We scoop a big pot here, and we move right along. All right, this brings us to our last hand of the night. It's been a hell of a session so far, and we're trying to end it on a banger. This is definitely the most interesting hand of the night, so let's talk about it. At this point in the night, everybody's agreed to a blind raise, so now it's 1, 2, straddle 10, blind 20. And in this case, I'm in the blind 20. Stacks are deep, money's flying, people are gambling, and we're looking to give action. There's a couple callers before villain from a couple hands makes it 100 in the big blind. And at this point, we're pretty deep with this gentleman, and we feel like we've gotten a decent read on him. We just know that he has been getting out of line in some hands, and we want to play in position on him. He's one of the fewer people at the table that has a similar stack to us. So we put in the call before the low jack right after us. Back rips it for 300. Cutoff gets out of the way, and then our villain doesn't waste much time before calling as well. And, you know, the 10-10-9-6 is a pretty terrible hand. Let's just call it how it is. I don't know what it is. Maybe it's later in the night. I'm looking to mix it up. Maybe I have a little bit of winner's tilt going on, which is probably a guarantee. You know, a lot of our pre-flop rules have just kind of gone out of the window. Dissecting this hand, you know, we definitely want to play in position on this player in a big pot, which is kind of how I justified it in the moment calling. It's, you know, this is definitely not recommended. But anyway, I digress. We throw in the 300 and we take a flop. A flop of 7, 8, 9 rainbow. We flop the second nuts, a pair, a backdoor flush draw, $1,000 already in the middle, and my God, that's a good flop. Dry side pot, so it's going to be a little hard to get a lot of money in my opinion. Big blind player checks. A lot of times his range is just going to be a give up, but we got to start building this pot. We want to get some money in the middle, and we go ahead and bet 300. Our opponent now surprises us. He snap says raise and throws a 1K chip in. Now, a lot to think about here. This player's got about 1,800 behind at this point. You know, players at this stake are just notoriously underbluffed. But at the same time, players at this stake also just bet their hands. Is this guy really going to check the Jack 10? We also have 2 10s in our hand, making it a lot less likely that he has it. I don't know. A lot of stuff going through my mind at this point because I don't know if calling is really an option. If we call, there will be 3,000 in the pot and he has like 800 behind. I can't imagine a turn where we just don't get the money in no matter what it comes, even if the board pairs. Yeah, it's a weird spot because it feels like even though we've only put 300 in on this flop, we're making a decision for our whole stack. The bad part about our hand is that we don't have a lot of room to improve. We have some runner boat outs and we have some runner flush, but in the times when he has Jack 10, we are in seriously bad shape. It's a really gross spot, you know. God, I tanked for quite a while on this, and that is not like me. And I was just trying to get a read. Me and this guy have been battling quite a bit tonight, and he just gave me this energy like he was so uncomfortable. He was so nervous. I asked him to count his stack, how much he had behind, and just watching him while he's doing it, trying to pick up on any read I can, because at this point, you know, it's kind of like a 50-50 spot in my head. You know, he's acting so nervous. I can't explain it. Some of the things that like I do or see in the live arena, it's really hard to like translate to the camera and describe it to y'all. But I just remember in game feeling this, like he had so much anxiety and nervousness, which is ultimately why hold our breath and say all in. And then immediately I know we've made a mistake when our opponent snaps it off and says, I call. Hi, talk about a misstep. So now we're playing a 5K pot, a little bit over. And, you know, I haven't ran the percentages, but if I had to guess, we probably have like 20%. It's probably being optimistic. Dealer, we're going to need some serious help. We need some type of hope on the turn. We need to see a board pair. We need to see a diamond. We need to see something. Please. Turn. One time. The 8 of diamonds. Oh, my God. Are we about to backdoor Bangkok this guy? There's no way. Biggest pot of the night. 4.4K in the middle. Can we get there one time? River is the 5 of hearts. We brick it all. And we get shown the ace, jack, 10, king. Tough. A lot to say about this hand. Win against my gut here that, you know, they underbluff. They always have it. Because I just can't describe it. He really just was so nervous. Later, or based off of his reaction of the win, of winning the hand, he like cheered and was excited. And then talking to him a little bit later, he was nervous because the money means a lot to him, I think. And, you know, it was a really big pot for him. So even though he had the nuts, he was very nervous. That's ultimately the read. So I think my read was correct that he was very nervous. Something was amiss. But what I didn't dissect about the read was that the guy's nervous because we're playing a big pot. Let's just call it how it is. This is bad. This is bad. And it's mistakes like this that really hurt your win rate a ton. And so let this be a extremely expensive lesson for me and a very free lesson to y'all that, you know, in big pots at low stakes PLO, when guys are telling you they have it, believe them. They probably have it, and fold. I think the worst part about this hand is that I have to go over it again with y'all. But nonetheless, I'm just trying to be transparent and try to explain to you like what was going through my mind in the middle, or like what was going through my mind during the session. Anyway, I'd love to hear your thoughts about this session. It was a juicy one. That was the last hand and a hell of a way to end the session. At this point, it's almost 5 a.m. We decide to stop punting our money, rack up our chips, and call it a night. Like I said in the beginning, a lot of interesting spots tonight. An unfortunate misstep to end the session, but that's how it goes sometimes. And you live with the mistakes and better yourself in the future. I think the most unfortunate part about vlogging is that I'm forced to relive these spots that I misstep, and it's quite painful. I really did not want to put this hand in the vlog, this last hand, but it felt like an injustice not to. So anyway, even with the mishap, we still end up profiting about this much. I'll put it on screen. Still a very good night in the 1-2 PLO streets, and I've been thoroughly impressed all around with the atmosphere, the drinks, the fun, the people, just everything. It's been a good time. With that being said, thanks for watching. If you made it this far, please subscribe. Like I said, we're going to be covering a lot of PLO content this year. I'm going to film another session tonight and post that sometime this week. So again, thanks for watching. Peace. I'll see you next time.